Hi everyone, this is video 3 in our series on GCSE business and how to answer the different types of exam questions. We're going to look at a long answer question now. We're going to look at the 6 marker. And so there's 2 types of 6 marker. We're going to go through both. We're going to show you some examples and we're going to talk to you about the differences between the two. So there's 2 types of 6 marker, a discuss question and an analyze question. It's really important that you know the difference between the two. It's really easy to spot the difference between the two, but in terms of what they assess, a little bit more complicated. So discuss questions assess knowledge and analysis, and there's no case study. Analyze questions assess analysis and application, so use a case study. And it's just really important that you know that, so that you know what skills you need to demonstrate when you're answering these questions. Now, the big clue here is that the discuss question, there's only one of them, and it's at the end of section A. And obviously section A doesn't have a case study, so it's really obvious that that's not going to be the application one. While the other 2 6 markers are the analyze questions, and they're both in section B, and obviously section B does have a case study, so you are going to need to use a case study in that answer. Now, that bit is the easy bit. Just make sure you remember that in the analyze questions, you need to be using quotes, you need to be demonstrating application, and in terms of structure, we just want 2 paragraphs here. Mike, you can do it a different way, can't you? But we typically always get our students to do it in 2 paragraphs.
Yeah, you can do one paragraph with your 5 linked strands in there, but I tend to find that the average to weaker students tend to run out of chains and they start repeating themselves. So I would say it's best to go with 2 paragraphs. Even my best ones, I tend to get to do 2 paragraphs. And if they're doing like your BLT, for example, then they're getting 6 chains, more than 5, and they're scoring full marks. So it's done and dusted.
It means that even if one of the links isn't, or is repeated, or isn't very good, or is superficial, you can still demonstrate level 3 analysis. Yeah, I think to be honest, even the best students will struggle to take a point and then develop it 5 times on that same link. That's a really long chain, and so 2 paragraphs is definitely the way to go. Now, in terms of the discuss question, we're going to start with the discuss question. So I'm going to talk through what level 1, level 2, level 3 looks like, and then we're going to go through an example here. The first thing to be aware of is just knowing what your assessment objectives are. So the 2 assessment objectives that are assessed here are knowledge and understanding, so AO1, and AO3A, which is analysis. So when it comes to our knowledge and understanding, if you're not sure what this is and you want a little bit more detail, our first video in this series talked through the different skills, the different assessment objectives. So if you want a little bit more information about what knowledge is, have a look at that. But hopefully this will be clear enough anyway. So with your knowledge and understanding is, do you make good points that are relevant? And do you use good key terminology? Are you using your key terms? Are you speaking like a business student rather than just a random person off the street answering the question? And then for analysis, do you then develop those points using the chains of reasoning? So creating links between your points and then taking them a little bit further. So the first thing to make clear is these answers are level of response. So the examiner or your teacher will assess you as either being level 1, level 2, or level 3, and it will be for these 2 skills. AO1 and AO3. So for level 1 knowledge, that is where you'd have fairly limited knowledge shown in the points that you've made. You've maybe made some generic statements, and there's some credit there, but your points could have been a lot better. They could have been a lot more specific, could have demonstrated the knowledge that you've learned over the course of studying the subject. For level 2, we should expect to see fairly accurate points here, and maybe in this level 2, you maybe haven't used a great deal of key terminology, and that could be one of the difference makers between level 2 and level 3. For level 3, you'd want strong knowledge shown, so 2 really good, we talked about 2 paragraphs, 2 really good points made, and then key terms being used confidently. For analysis, it's all about those links. So you've made your point, how much further can you take those? And this is where we'd use our connectives, maybe because leads to, therefore, or anything else that's going to take one point and add that little bit of depth, make that chain of reasoning. So level 1, you might see one link, you might see isolated points, lack of development, but they might have made it, a student might have made a point. For level 2, you would expect to see some level of analysis, so some chains of reasoning, some links, probably between 2 and 4 links. And then for level 3, you would need to see at least 5, if not potentially more, links. So if you do 2 BLTs, for example, as Mike mentioned just earlier, you would expect to see 6 links there, and therefore that should demonstrate level 3. So obviously, Mike, a student could get, for example, level 2 in knowledge and level 3 in analysis. Can you just kind of explain how those overall levels and the marks are decided?
It's more common to get level 3 knowledge and then slip a little bit on the analysis by maybe missing off one chain. So maybe by having 4 links, but showing good terminology, etc. So you might get level 3, say, for knowledge application, for knowledge and understanding, and level 2 for analysis, and then you find yourself in the 4 to 5 mark kind of area.
Yeah, and I think that's that. Yeah, and that's the key thing is that your overall mark will be kind of an average of your levels of response. So if you're level 2 for knowledge and level 2 for analysis, it's quite obvious that you're going to get either 3 or 4 marks. But if you are split between them, so for example, if you are, like you mentioned, it's probably going to be that your knowledge is going to score higher than your analysis. If you've got, for example, level 3 knowledge and level 1 analysis, because you've made some really good points and used key terms, but you haven't developed it, then you would average out to be a level 3. Again, that's fairly unlikely because if you've got level 3 knowledge, you would expect to at least have developed that enough to get level 2.
Yeah, they usually match, I would say.
Yeah.
They're usually level 2, level 2, level 3, level 3. It's more on the applied 6 marker where you can have amazing generic chains but no application, and you get a 1 and a 3 scenario.
Let's have a look at an example answer here. So the first thing, before Mike goes through the answer, you get your knowledge marks from making the good points and for demonstrating your knowledge, and your analysis come from the links. And so it's just important when you see this model answer, you'll see like a sentence to start off each paragraph, and that's where you're going to get your knowledge. You're going to get your analysis from how you take that a little bit further. We're going to color code it on the screen, so it's going to be really easy to see. And it's just also worth remembering that there aren't any evaluation marks here, so you don't need to balance your points. For example, this one is discuss the importance. That could be 2 reasons why it's important. It could be a reason why it's important, maybe a reason why it's not important. If it was discuss the impact, you could say positive impact, negative impact. So you don't need to balance it, but you might find it easier to do so if, for example, you're struggling to come up with 2 good positives. You might do 1 positive, 1 negative. So just something to bear in mind. So Mike, do you want to talk us through the 6 marker then and sort of each sentence by sentence and how it kind of gains its marks?
Yeah, we'll do. Just before I go through it, just to extend on what you said, if you've got an impact question or an importance question, I tend to say do 1 pro, 1 con, just because it reduces the chance of repetition. Because some students tend to do the same point twice in a 6 marker almost, or it's far too similar. And if they do that, they'll only get one of the paragraphs credited. So be a little bit careful on the impact. Should be what you're hoping to see, and it means you can pick anything out of your knowledge that you've learned in class. So let's have a look at this student response, shall we? So one reason cash is important is that it is essential to pay bills. Okay, so that's a point. It's a little bit vague on the bills, but we'll go there. It's GCSE. This is because many fixed costs must be paid immediately. Again, that is true, and it's nice that the student has put fixed costs and not just said costs in general. I think if they'd said costs on its own, you wouldn't be getting the mark, because bills and costs probably fairly similar. But because they've highlighted it might be a fixed cost, so that develops that a little bit more. This leads to cash being required immediately to make these payments. Another point there, you need the cash to actually make the payments, therefore allowing a business to continue operating. Or you could have said remain solvent, that kind of thing is the idea. Right, we then go into, so from the first paragraph we've got a point and we've got 3 links. Yeah, so we're well on our way. We could make this second paragraph slightly shorter, maybe 2 links if we wanted to, but again, we try and go for 3. Let's have a look. So another reason cash is important is to pay suppliers on time. So there's the point, and that is different enough from the first paragraph. This is because failing to pay suppliers could lead to suppliers refusing to provide materials or offer trade credit. So I'd say that whole thing is one development strand. I wouldn't give 1 development for the provide materials or offer trade credit. Therefore, avoiding an issue where a business has no materials to manufacture the goods. Again, that's another point. The student usually would naturally go on to say allowing them to keep on selling, but it's not needed. We've got enough links here. So you're going to be looking at knowledge. The student clearly understands cash and the importance of cash. They talked about immediacy, so I'd say we're talking about cash flow and we're not talking about revenue. So I'm thinking knowledge and understanding goes into level 3 there. We've clearly got 5 links, so we are going to be level 3 for analysis. Positively marking, that's how we end up getting to the 6 out of 6. Wouldn't be upset if someone gave this 5 out of 6, but it's a very good solid student answer, this one.
Okay, brilliant. So moving on to the analyze question, as we've mentioned, there's one key difference between these two, and that is it is application and analysis that we're looking at here. So for application, analysis we've already talked about. Do you develop your points using chains of reasoning? And there's a few interesting things about this analyze question where it doesn't actually reward you necessarily for your first sentence, because that would be, as we've just seen, that would be our knowledge marks. There's no knowledge marks on this question. So instead, that second criteria we're looking for alongside analysis is application. Do you link your points to the case study effectively? So what does that look like, level 1, level 2, and level 3? So level 1, you'd probably expect to see a fairly limited use of the extract and case study quotes. So maybe some sort of superficial mentions. There's a little bit of relevance, but it's not really specific to the business. You could probably swap out for any other company in that market, and that answer would be totally valid. For level 2, we're probably seeing good use of the case study here, but maybe inconsistently. So we might see really great use of the case study in one paragraph, but not at all in another. We might see solid use of the case study, but potentially missed opportunities where other bits of case study could be brought in. For level 3, we want to see good use of the extract, relevant quotes or references used in every paragraph. Now, in this answer, there's 2 paragraphs, so we'd want to see it spread out through the answer. I remember reading a examiner's report just recently, and it talked about one of the key criteria for level 3 application is that the application is spread out throughout the answer. Now, if you were doing one paragraph, then that would have to be spread out throughout that paragraph, so not just one big chunk of application at one point and then not coming back to it. Whereas if you're doing 2 paragraphs, it's a bit easier to kind of get that right because you have application in both paragraphs and it's naturally spread out. For our analysis, we've already talked about this, but it's worth repeating. 1 link if it's probably going to be level 1, 2 to 4 links for level 2, and 5+ links for level 3. So we've got another answer here. Again, it's worth just reminding us, our analysis marks come from our links, potentially BLT, whatever you're using. Application marks come from using the quotes from the case study or the references from the case study to support your points. And as I mentioned, you'll see it in a second, you don't get any credit here for the initial point. The question assesses your ability to develop these points and support with application. It doesn't assess your ability to come up with those points in the first place. Naturally, Mike, you need to come up with those. If you're going to get the analysis marks, you probably need to have a pretty good point. You're just not going to get any credit for it, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the idea would hopefully be for your point to be applied and then you're scoring application marks in that first sentence. That's what I would say. So let's have a look, shall we? So the question we are using here, it's on the last course patisserie that I think we used in a previous video. So it's analyse the impact on last course patisserie of this changing level of consumer income. And it says above that it's expected to rise over the next 10 years. So we've got to talk about the impact of income on this business and its impact. So it could be one positive, one negative. That's how I would do it. Let's have a look at how the student has answered this one. So they've got increasing levels of income could have a positive impact on LCP as they provide luxury goods. So can you see in this first sentence, we've actually got application there, providing luxury goods. So it's not a wasted kind of sentence, straight into it. So the student then goes on, this is because they sell handmade desserts and pastries and use the best ingredients for desserts. So lots of application in there again. And we've also got application on the luxury goods just above it. So lots of application. It's a really good start. This increased income should lead to increased spending on luxury goods. Bit of repetition, but okay. On the application because of increased levels of disposable income. So we're showing, even though knowledge and understanding isn't in this, we are showing that, or the student is showing, I should say, that disposable income is linked to consumer income overall. They're not quite the same thing. So if we look at that, we've got level 3 application in that first paragraph, and we have got 3 linked strands. So again, we're on course for a 4-mark answer. So the student writes a second point, however, so I think it's going to be a negative, which is good. Increased levels of income could have a negative impact on LCP as it could increase costs. Okay, interesting point. Let's see where it goes. This is because higher income could lead to higher demand in the economy, causing, I think that says, inflation. Okay, that's another point. Interesting. Therefore, LCP's costs when buying the best ingredients for desserts could increase So that's another point, which could reduce profit margins, which is another analysis point. So this has got 6 link strands over the whole course of it. We've got a little bit of repetition in the application, but that's fine. So this student really understands consumer incomes. This is clearly going to be level 3 application. It's throughout. You can see with the yellow highlights, it's not just one quote. There's a few quotes and luxury goods in the first line as well that isn't even highlighted. So this is looking good. Level 3, and then analysis, like I say, six link strands, easy level 3. And because we've got 6, you're much happier now as an examiner to go to the top of the band, and we're giving full marks 6 out of 6. Whereas the last one, we was debatable about 5 or 6. So to get in that extra link strand, just make sure you get that full mark answer.
But hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of how to approach the 2 different types of 6 marker. Hopefully seeing the examples and seeing it highlighted makes it really clear kind of what kind of things you need to be looking to put into your answers. And keep an eye out on the channel, because we're going to have a video on 9 markers and a video on 12 markers to join this series soon. We've also, if you haven't seen it already, got an introduction to the GCSE business assessment criteria. And we've got a video on short answer questions, so 1, 2, and 3 markers worth checking out. And we'll see you in the next one.